Hi, everyone. Good evening. Carl Steinbeck here. We had the guilty plea today, not the sentencing, but the guilty plea today for Brian Kohberger. And so just want to cover that tonight. And this was in the state of Idaho, the capital there of Idaho, Boise. So let's just get right to it here. And then we also have some victim statements given out today from 2 of the 4 families. I want to cover that today as well. But first, let's cover this right here. This is from the trial channel, which is covered a lot of good cases, including the Karen Reed case, and they covered this as well today.
All right, this is CR 0124316665. Defendant is present in custody with counsel, Ms. Thompson, Ms. Jennings, and Ms. Taylor, Ms. Massoff, and Ms. Barlow. The state's present with Mr. Thompson, Mr. Horowitz, Ms. Jennings, and Mr. Nye is here as well. Am I miss anybody? I'm sorry.
Ms. Allen is here as well.
Ms. Allen is here as well. Very well, thank you. All right, we are here today to entertain a change of plea. Before I start, I want to address some issues of concern and otherwise. First, I appreciate everybody in attendance today being on their best behavior. Please, no outbursts or demonstrations. Any such conduct will result in immediate removal and may result in an inability to attend further court proceedings in this case. I want to point out that there have been calls by some for the public to contact me and my office in an attempt to influence my decision-making in this case. This has been extraordinarily disruptive for court staff and the ability for them to get work done, not only in this case, but in other cases where defendants are entitled to have their cases processed, and frankly, as important, if not more so, for victims to have their cases processed in those cases.
I think the judge must have gotten a flurry, an avalanche of different messages, and for him to make a comment like that, I think that's pretty telling that he must have the volume that's necessary for him to respond.
It's also highly inappropriate. The court is not supposed to, and this court will never take into account public sentiment in making an opinion regarding its judicial decisions in cases.
I think the most common thing was people saying, "Don't accept the plea. No, he needs to go to trial. Don't let him get off on just life sentence. Make him get the death penalty," kind of thing.
Court should, and I always will, make decisions based on where the facts and the law lead me. Period. I have not read any of the numerous messages nor listened to any of the numerous voicemails that have been sent to me and my staff. Those have all been forwarded to security and, where appropriate, to law enforcement. I ask that you not continue to mount such campaigns or to send me information like this, because, again, it is not appropriate and, frankly, not something I would take into account when deciding a matter in a case like this. I also want people to understand some very basic concepts about the ideas of separation of powers, what the court's duties are, and what the duties and the rights of the executive, or in this case, the prosecuting attorney, is. The executive, the elected prosecutor, is the sole authority in deciding what charges to pursue, including whether as well as what penalties to ask for, and what penalties to pursue, including the death penalty.
As well as what plea bargain negotiations take place, if any, and whether to come to some agreement with the defense or not. So that the judge doesn't really get involved in. He's going to explain that he really doesn't have much to say on the actual sentence, whether he can disapprove the plea agreement or not.
This court cannot require the prosecutor to seek the death penalty, nor would it be appropriate for this court to attempt to do that. This court, in considering a plea agreement, if it were to reject this plea agreement, cannot force the state to seek the death penalty.
Yeah, so if he rejects the plea agreement, what is he going to go to make it go to trial? And then there's a chance there could be a hung jury or not guilty. And then let's just say even if he's found guilty, what if the jury comes back and says life sentence? We're not going with the death penalty. So
my role and power in considering a plea agreement is extremely limited. My role is to ensure that the defendant's plea is given freely, voluntarily, and intelligently. If those things are met, I can only reject a plea, such as the one in this case, where I'm not being asked to agree to the sentence in advance. If I can only reject it, for example, if the defendant does not meet or admit to all the elements of the crime. That is, I can ensure what is called a factual basis to the plea.
he's just going through and making sure it's legally sufficient to have Kohberger plead guilty because he has to admit certain things. He didn't even have to describe anything in detail, unlike some jurisdictions. But
finally, I want to offer my apologies to all the families, including the victims' families, the families of the defendant, for the short notice for today's hearing, and I'm sure what must have been the hurried efforts to get here. I, like most everyone else, learned of this plea agreement Monday afternoon and had no inkling of it beforehand. Prior to that time, I was under the belief that this case was proceeding to trial, as had been indicated, and my staff and I were busy continuing to work on preparations to have potentially 10,000 citizens of Ada County come to jury duty starting in mid-July. With the question.
yeah, so he was surprised just like us that all of a sudden, hey, there's talk of a guilty plea. It's all worked out. They just need to have it executed in the court there, and they did it already today, this Wednesday. So this was a really quick turn of events here.
Questionnaire process in mid-July. It was, once I learned of the defendant's decision to change his plea in this case, it was important that I take the plea as soon as possible because of the extraordinary administrative efforts that were otherwise attendant to the process of this getting this trial potentially underway on time, and including the significant process of bringing, again, potentially up to 10,000 jurors to come in and fill out juror questionnaires prior to the beginning of the voir dire process.
Well, this case had such publicity on it nationwide, even across the world, that's why they went through so many. I didn't realize it was 10,000. No, that's a huge number. I've never heard of that kind of number.
And so it was important that we, if we're going to go down this road, do so expeditiously so that we can avoid those costs and expenses associated with that. Otherwise, if it was not going to result in a plea, or for some reason the plea were to fall through today, that we could continue diligently towards trial at the time specified.
Yeah, so they're going to keep the trial date still there for 18 August. And until he pleads guilty here today, they're not going to assume that that trial date's a foregone conclusion, that it's never going to happen. But you need to get him convicted first. He needs to be found factually sufficient to plead guilty. And with this happening, then they can, I think you'll see the judge do here is he's going to keep that trial date, that first week of trial date window open, he said, but they're going to move the sentencing now to 23 July. So we'll hear that later on in the hearing. So they want to get this done really quick, which I'll talk more about the pros of that.
And so that obviously required that we act quickly. And so some folks may have not had the amount of time that we would otherwise allow for them to travel here. And so, again, I apologize for that. I want to make people aware that during the hearing, if you are to leave the courtroom for any reason, you will not be readmitted during the hearing. Also, when we finish the hearing this morning, I ask that the public and media wait in their seats until the victims' families and the defendants' families and others are escorted out of the courtroom before you start to leave. Finally, I want to acknowledge the trial court administrator and her staff, the Ada County Sheriff, and the Ada County 4th District Marshal Service for the huge lift that they've accomplished in preparing for and orchestrating this hearing today, as well as to all the security attendant today that you see, and some of whom many of whom you don't see, with less than 48 hours notice. And so I appreciate the hard work that they've been doing. Frankly, some of them while they were on some vacation prior to the trial starting and had to call that short. And so I appreciate very much their professionalism
He's even thanking the sheriff's department. That's interesting.
and dedication. All right. That said, let's move to the business of today. I understand the state and the defense have reached a plea agreement in this case. For the record, I have a written plea agreement which indicates in sum, the defendant will plead guilty to all 5 counts in the indictment: burglary, felony, and first-degree murder, 4 counts. The state and the defendant stipulate, that is, that the defense is not free to argue for a lesser sentence at sentencing to the following. The defendant on the burglary charge will be sentenced to 10 years fixed, and that the defendant on counts 2 through 5, the 4 counts of first-degree homicide, on each count would receive a fixed life sentence, all 5 of those counts to run consecutive to one another. Defendant, as part of the plea agreement, waives his right to appeal.
So this, by these being consecutive, there's no way even if they had parole, I don't see him ever getting out. So this is definitely a sentence that is going to assure the communities there all across the state, wherever this guy would live, whether he goes back to Pennsylvania or wherever, he's never going to see the light of day outside of prison. And there's a good chance he could get, something bad happen to him in prison as well. Prison is a very dangerous place. And this is a guy that's not a sophisticated criminal. He didn't have any priors of any kind before he went on this killing spree, this maniac, doing such a horrific quadruple murder there in that one morning.
As well as his right to appeal the sentence and his right to seek leniency or reconsideration of the sentence under Idaho Criminal Rule 35.
They mentioned burglary, but burglary can also be, in some states, it could be like intent to commit any kind of offense there. So it's not just stealing.
This is not a Rule 11 agreement, meaning the court is not bound by the plea agreement and could impose a different lawful sentence at sentencing. The stipulated agreement between the parties is the maximum on each count. So theoretically, the only thing the court could do would be a lesser sentence at sentencing. But the defendant is not free to ask the court to do so under the plea agreement. Are there any other material terms of the plea agreement that the parties would like to make? Obviously, the plea agreement, the written plea agreement will speak for itself and be part of the court record.
Not from the state, Your Honor. Thank you.
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, very
Yeah, Kohberger just looks frozen.
well. All right. Ms. Taylor, have you had sufficient time to discuss this case and all of its ramifications with your client?
I have, Your Honor.
Have you discussed fully with him his rights, defenses, and possible consequences to him of the guilty plea?
Yes, Your Honor.
Have you been able to do all the discovery you feel necessary?
Yes, Your Honor.
And have you informed your client of the importance of providing the court truthful and accurate answers in taking this plea today?
I have.
Have you apprised your client of any and all offers and counter offers and answered his questions about those?
Yes,
Do you consent to the entry of the plea today?
I do.
All right, Mr. Kohberger, I need to ask you some questions this afternoon, or I guess it's this morning still. I do this to ensure that so that I am assured that you understand the nature of the charges to which I understand you're going to plead guilty, as well as the possible consequences to you of your guilty pleas. I want to make sure your plea is given voluntarily, and I want to make sure that you actually committed the crimes to which you're pleading guilty, because I don't want you to plead guilty to a crime you didn't commit. If you attempt to plead guilty today, but for some reason I don't accept your plea, then it is possible that your statements today could be used against you later at trial. Do you understand that?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And now, while you're standing, actually, why don't you take the oath from the clerk?
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give in the matter not pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
All right, and Mr. Kohberger, just to make it,
I noticed that he never says Your Honor or Judge, and that's something that I've always made sure my clients say that to the court, even on a guilty plea. So not sure why he's not doing that here.
you don't need to stand when you speak to me. I appreciate the sign of respect, but for convenience, you can remain seated, all right? Before I start asking you questions today, have you consumed substance questions? Let me ask you, have you consumed any alcohol, drug, or other intoxicating substance that would impair your ability to understand or exercise reasonable judgment?
No.
You feel like you are thinking clearly today?
Yes.
All right, I want you to understand what the possible penalties are for each of the crimes to which I understand you're going to offer a guilty plea today. They include on count one, the burglary, a fine of up to $50,000 and a period of incarceration of up to 10 years in the state penitentiary. You may be required to pay restitution to any victims of the crime. Count 2, 3, 4, and 5 for first-degree murder. The consequences include a fine of up to $50,000, a period of incarceration of life imprisonment, which is a requirement of a sentence, that it be a life sentence with a mandatory minimum sentence of at least 10 years on each of those counts. In addition, you would be potentially responsible for a fine of up to $5,000 to.
Yes, I do think he's going to spend a lot of time in solitary because he's not a guy that looks very tough, being able to defend himself against other very violent criminals that will have probably a long history of felony convictions, including ones of violence. So he has probably not a real clue of what he's going to be facing yet, but he'll get a rude awakening pretty fast once he gets sentenced.
Each of the victims of your crime to be enforced in the form of a civil judgment, to operate as additional punishment. This is in excess of any restitution or fines that the court could order. And again, you may be required to pay restitution to the victims of the crime. You would be required to provide, as to counts 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, a DNA sample and a right thumbprint impression, and potentially pay for analysis of those samples. You would lose any right to possess, purchase, or carry a firearm, the right to serve on jury duty, the right to hold public office, and the right to vote. Do you understand the charges and all those possible consequences?
Yes.
You've heard the plea agreement that I talked about today. Do you agree with that plea agreement?
Yes.
And do you understand the nature of the charges that you've been charged with that I understand you're going to plead guilty today to?
Yes.
As as I indicated, I'm not bound by the plea agreement, but the plea agreement is for the maximum on each count. Do you understand that I'm not bound by the plea agreement?
Yes.
Has anyone promised you that I would be lenient or easy on you if you pled guilty?
No.
Has anyone threatened you or anyone close to you to get you to plead guilty?
No.
Has anyone other than the state's agreements with respect to the plea agreement, has anyone promised you anything in exchange for your plea agreement?
No.
Has anyone told you to be untruthful in answering my questions today?
No.
Has anyone offered you a reward of any kind other than the plea agreement in order to get you to plead guilty today?
No.
Are you pleading guilty because you are guilty?
Yes.
And counsel, obviously, there have been a number of motions filed to suppress evidence in this case. Other than those filed, are there any other motions that you felt were available with respect to Rule 12?
No, Your Honor.
And Mr. Kohberger, you understand that by entering the guilty plea in this case, you would be giving up your right to appeal any decision this court made, as well as your sentence.
Yes.
Yeah, he's definitely handcuffed and shackled, or at least shackled with leg irons. So, yeah, I'm not sure why they allowed him to wear civilian clothes. Normally, on a guilty plea, you'd be in the regular jail uniform. Maybe that's something the defense counsel asked for, and that was part of the plea agreement. And the prosecutor said, well, okay, we'll make an exception. We're not going to get hung up on that kind of minor aspect of it.
Have you had enough time to decide whether or not to plead guilty?
Yes.
You pleading guilty freely and voluntarily?
Yes.
Given your choices, do you believe it's in your best interest to plead guilty?
Yes.
Have you discussed fully the matter of pleading guilty with your attorney, and are you satisfied with the advice you've received?
Yes.
Has your attorney advised you to your satisfaction about what your rights are, what your defenses may be, and what the possible consequences to you of your guilty plea are?
Yes.
Has your attorney done everything you've asked them to do?
Yes.
Are you satisfied with their representation of you?
Yes.
I have received a written guilty plea advisory questionnaire that is purported to be filled out by you. Did you fill that document out?
Yes.
Did you understand the questions that you answered in this document?
Yes.
And are the answers that are outlined in this document your answers?
Yes.
Are those answers truthful?
Yes.
Did you sign the document?
Yes.
And this document outlines many of the rights that you have in this case. Should you not plead guilty, did you understand those rights?
Yes.
They include a right to a jury trial. Do you understand that?
Yes.
They include a right to the presumption of innocence. Do you understand that?
Yes.
You have the right to require the state to prove your guilt as to each element beyond a reasonable doubt. Do you understand that?
Yes.
They include a right to confront your accusers and cross-examine witnesses presented by the state, including by utilizing the subpoena power of the court to accomplish that. Do you understand that?
Yes.
You understand you would have a privilege against self-incrimination and a right to remain silent, meaning you would not be compelled to testify if you did not wish to, had you not pled guilty.
Yes.
You understand you're giving up that privilege and those rights that I've just outlined by pleading guilty.
Yes.
All right, I want you to understand what the state would have had to have proven at trial had you, to the crimes that you're pleading guilty to, had you, if you didn't plead guilty. Let me find the document. Hang on a second here. All right. So as to count one burglary, the state would have to have proven that on or about November 13, 2022 in Latah County, Idaho, you unlawfully entered a residence, Local County, Idaho, you 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho, with the intent to commit the felony crime of murder. As to count two, the state would have had to have proven that on or about that same date in Latah County, Idaho,
It's a little
you
fast.
did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought, kill and murder Madison Mogen, a human being, by stabbing Madison Mogen, from which she died. As to count three, the state would have had to have proven that on that same date in Latah County, at that same address, you did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought, kill and murder Kaylee Goncalves, a human being, by stabbing her, from which she died. As to count four, the state would have had to have proven that on or about that same date in Latah County, Idaho, you did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought, kill and murder Xana Kernodle, a human being, by stabbing her, from which she died. And then as to count five, also murder in the first degree, that on or about November 13th, 2022, in Latah County, Idaho, you did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought, kill and murder Ethan Chapin, a human being, by stabbing him, from which he died. Do you understand those things the state would have had to have proven?
Yes.
And do you understand that by pleading guilty, the state no longer has to prove those things because you're admitting those things are true?
Yes.
Little Haro, why on or about the same date? All prosecutors charged it that way. They just want to have some variance in case some variance of time and date comes up at trial. If it's very minor, then that's still a good charge, but you can't have things that are very far off. Otherwise, you can have issues involving the constitutionality of it because there's lack of proper notice. So it's just something that prosecutors always do in every case I've ever been.
I want to also make for the record, the defendant has provided with the guilty plea advisory form a document entitled Written Factual Basis that purports to have the defendant's signature dated 1 July 2025. Did you sign that document?
Yes.
And did you agree with the written factual basis that is included there?
Yes.
And then let me ask you, did you, on November 13th, 2022, enter the residence at 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho, with the intent to commit the felony crime of murder?
Yes.
Did you, on November 13th, 2022, in Latah County, state of Idaho, kill and murder Madison Mogen, a human being?
Yes.
And did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, and with premeditation and malice aforethought?
Yes.
Did you honor
Yeah, he's not talking like he has much remorse. It sounds very matter-of-factly admitting to this.
about that same date in Moscow, Idaho, kill and murder Kaylee Goncalves, a human being?
Yes.
And did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, and with premeditation and malice aforethought?
Yes.
And did you, on that same date in Moscow, Idaho, kill and murder Xana Kernodle, a human being?
Yes.
And did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought?
Yes.
And then on or about November 13th, 2022, again in Latah County, Idaho, did you kill and murder Ethan Chapin, a human being?
Yes.
Did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought?
Yes.
I would ask the state at this time to provide its recitation of its factual basis had this case gone to trial.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, the organization of the recitation is different than what I think the court and the public may be familiar with from the probable cause affidavit and other documents. The state's evidence, as an overview, would show that back in March of 2022, when the defendant was residing in his parents' residence or was residing back in Pennsylvania, his home state. He purchased online a K-bar knife and sheath with an Amazon gift card that he had purchased shortly prior to the purchase of the knife, sheath, and sharpener. Jumping ahead, the end of June of that year, the defendant, Mr. Kohberger, moved from Pennsylvania to Pullman, Washington, which is right across the state line from Moscow, Idaho, for the purpose of pursuing a PhD in criminal justice at Washington State University. The state's evidence would indicate that beginning July 9th of 2022, Mr. Kohberger's phone began connecting to a cell tower that serves the area of the 1122 King Road residence in Moscow, Idaho. Now, I will acknowledge for the court and all present that there are many residences in that area. It's a dense population of mostly college-related occupants. Between July 9th of 2022 and November 7th, the defendant's phone connected to that particular tower during late night, early morning hours, 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. on approximately 23 times. Now, I will acknowledge also, we do not have evidence that the defendant had direct contact with 1122 or with residents of 1122, but we can put his phone in that area on those times. In the interim, on August 22nd of 2022, Lake Tahoe County Sheriff's Deputy Darren Duke conducted a traffic stop in the early morning hour or late evening hours, about 11 p.m. On the west side of Moscow, on the Moscow-Pullman Road. This was the traffic stop of Mr. Kohberger's car, which turned out to be a 2015 white Hyundai Elantra with Pennsylvania plates. During the course of the traffic stop, Deputy Duke was able to obtain Mr. Kohberger's name, Brian Kohberger, his phone number, and his address, which at that point was an apartment address in Pullman. We then move to the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022. The state's evidence would show that early morning hours on that day, Mr. Kohberger's phone left his Pullman residence, which is an apartment in kind of the central northwest part of Pullman. That phone was then subsequently turned off at approximately 2:54 a.m. and remained off until approximately 4:48 a.m. on Sunday, the 13th of November. The state's evidence would include a trial, video surveillance of a business on the Moscow-Pullman Highway, just across the state line from
There's a little bit of echo there, but that's on every channel from what I understand.
Moscow. It would show a vehicle matching the description of the defendant's Hyundai Elantra entering Moscow at approximately 3:02 a.m. Compiled surveillance that the investigators put together from businesses and residents then show the defendant's car, the white Elantra, as I've described, circling the 1122 King Road area, that neighborhood, starting around 3:30 or so in the morning. Comes into the immediate area of 1122 King Road, which is actually on a dead end, and then leaves several times. And approximately 4:05 that morning, the defense car had entered that area, was leaving, stopped at the intersection of King and Queen Road, did a U-turn, and the state's evidence would show that the defendant's car came back and parked behind and above the 1122 King Road residence. The state believes that its evidence would then show that the defendant entered the residence of 1122 through the kitchen sliding door on the back side of the residence, which is the side of the residence that would face the area above where the defendant's car was parked. Defendant entered the residence, went to the third floor, and with a knife, killed Madison Mogen and Caitlin Goncalves. The defendant, as he left that room, for whatever reason, ended up leaving, or the sheath for a K-bar knife was left on the bed next to Madison Mogen's body. And I can jump ahead. That sheath was tested by the Idaho State Police Forensic Lab, and single source male DNA was found on the snap of that sheath, as well as blood from both Kaylee and Madison and other trace evidence.
Mhm.
It's important to note single source male DNA was on the snap of that sheath. The state's evidence would show that Xana Knodel, still awake at this time, in fact, had taken a DoorDash order not long before this started. Her room was not on the 3rd floor, it was on the 2nd floor on the west side. As the defendant was either coming down the stairs or leaving, he encountered Xana, and he ended up killing her, also with a large knife. Ethan Chapin, Xana's boyfriend, was asleep in their bedroom, in her bedroom, and the defendant killed him as well with a large fixed-blade knife. Each victim suffered multiple wounds. I will state for the record that there is no evidence there was any sexual component or sexual assault on any of the victims. I want to make that clear so there's no speculation. There were 2 other roommates in the house, and they were already asleep. During the course of this, one of those roommates awoke, looked out her door not knowing what was going on, and saw the defendant, who was dressed in black with a black balaclava on, holding some sort of container in his hand. And she saw him leave the house through the direction of the kitchen where that sliding door is that I mentioned before. At approximately
Seeing a guy dressed like that and you don't respond, calling the police, it's something that a lot of people are having problems comprehending.
4:20 that morning, so this would have been 15 minutes or so later, Finn's car is seen on a surveillance camera for 1112 King Road, which is immediately next door to the west of 1122, leaving the area at a high rate of speed. And if the court were to see that, or anybody in this courtroom would see that, you can see the car almost loses control as it makes the corner, heads north, and then turns to go south on Walinta, which is one of the only ways to get out of that part of town. The evidence would show that following that, the defendant in his Elantra drove south of Moscow. We know that he drove on the back roads because there are surveillance cameras on the main highways, Highway 95, that would have picked up the defendant's car if he'd gone that route. And they did not show the defendant's car on that route during the time. So we know that he went through a variety of back roads in very rural, isolated part of Latah County. About 4:48 that morning,
Highly suspicious.
defendant's phone comes back on. And the evidence will show that that phone was located south of Moscow, likely at a side road intersection with Highway 95. From there, the defendant's phone activity tracks him back north towards Pullman, Washington, where the defendant lived. About 5:26, starting approximately 5:26, various surveillance cameras in Pullman, Washington pick up the defendant's vehicle as he enters Pullman from the south and heads north and slightly west towards his apartment, where he arrived at approximately 5:30 in the morning. Later that morning, Sunday, the 13th of November of 2022, Mr. Kohberger's phone returned to the area of King Road. We don't know exactly what he did, but it returned to that area. It's about 9 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
He was there for about 10 minutes and then returned to his Pullman residence. About 9:30, the state's evidence will show, evidence taken from the defendant's phone, that he took a selfie of himself
Yeah, but him wearing the baklava, that's what was really the thing that should have alerted.
on his phone in
Thumbs
what
up.
appears to be the bathroom of his Pullman apartment with a thumbs up. The defendant's phone then went to the Lewiston-Clarkston Valley, approximately 30 miles south of Moscow and Pullman. And the defendant is actually seen with his car at various businesses down there. This area is the confluence of the Clearwater River and the Snake River. Lewiston is Idaho's seaport. Large bodies of moving water down there. In addition to tracing the defendant's activities, as I've just outlined on the 13th and leading up to the 13th, the state's evidence will show that following Sunday, November 2, business records show that the defendant began searching for a K-bar knife and a K-bar knife sheath, as the state believes, to replace the one that was left at the scene of the murders. The evidence also
Highly
will
probative.
suggest that there were at least attempts by the defendant to delete or alter his purchase history on Amazon, where all these transactions had occurred. Later that week, the state's evidence would show that Mr. Kohberger went to what we would call DMV, motor vehicle licensing here in Idaho, in Pullman, to change his car registration in Pennsylvania to Washington. That's of note because Pennsylvania cars do not require a front license plate. The vehicles seen on the surveillance cameras of the defendant's car showed it didn't have a front license plate on it. At the time of the traffic stop by Deputy Duke in August, it was Pennsylvania plate, no front license plate. Mr. Kohberger proceeded to finish his semester of studies at Washington State University and returned to Pennsylvania for the holidays. Law enforcement at this point were aware of Mr. Kohberger, had been accessing information about him, were trying to find him. They located him in Pennsylvania, and they conducted what's called a trash pull. During the nighttime hours, agents of the FBI, who assisted immensely with this case, working with the sanitation department back in this neighborhood in Pennsylvania, took trash that had been set out on the street for collection, sent the contents of that from the Pennsylvania residence of the defendant's parents to the Idaho State Forensic Laboratory, where the lab experts there were able to identify DNA on a Q-tip as coming from the father of the person whose DNA was found on the knife sheath that was next to Madison Mogen's body in the bed. Subsequently, an arrest warrant was issued here in Idaho, and a search warrant was issued in the state of Pennsylvania with the assistance not only of the FBI, but the Pennsylvania State Police. Mr. Kohberger was arrested at his parents' home to return to Idaho. Upon his return to Idaho, a DNA sample was taken from him, and it matched the DNA found on the knife sheath next to Maddie's body.
That knife sheath with his DNA on it is so incriminating, and yet there's still people that think it was planted. I mean, anything's possible when you consider all these different indicators of guilt, the way his movements were about, what he's doing, shutting off his phone, taking the back roads, what's he doing over there back the next morning. I mean, all that is so indicative of a guilty conscience.
At the crime scene. I can tell the court, in public, the weapon itself, the knife, has not yet been recovered. I can tell the court that the defendant's apartment in Pullman was searched, as well as his office. Spartan would be a kind characterization. There was virtually nothing there. Nothing of evidentiary value was found. And of course, we are now talking 6-8 weeks after the time of the killings. In Pennsylvania, the defendant's car was seized, and it was actually pretty much disassembled internally. And it also had been cleaned. There was a bucket of cleaner right beside it. I think we can all look to our own cars, you know, in those compartments in the doors. You can try to keep them clean where you put stuff. There's always some degree of crud in there. They were spotless. The defendant's car had been meticulously cleaned inside. And the state would present to the jury that that was part of the defendant's plan in covering up this. The defendant has studied crime. In fact, he did a detailed paper on crime scene processing when he was working on his pre-doctorate degrees, and he had that knowledge and skill. So, Your Honor, at the end, the state submits that the evidence that I've given just a quick overview of, and that to present in court would consume weeks, which the state is prepared to do and has been prepared to do, would show that as the defendant has just admitted and pleaded guilty on November 13th, 2022, excuse me, Mr. Kohberger entered the residence of 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho. He did that with the intent to kill. We will not represent that he intended to commit all of the murders that he did that night, but we know that that is what resulted, and that he then killed intentionally, willfully, deliberately, with premeditation, and with malice forethought, Maddie Mogen, Kaylee Goncalves, Ethan Chapin, and Santa Cruz. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, based on the state's proffer and importantly, based upon defendant's explicit admission to committing these crimes, the court finds there is a factual basis.
Right. What I think is lacking in Idaho is that they don't ask the defendant more details on how exactly did you commit the crime, because a lot of defendants could just want to plead guilty to avoid a harsher sentence. And so, and that would help alleviate a lot of the concerns, saying that this guy was framed and he's just taking this deal to cut his losses, to do it for his parents, or he's just so afraid of death penalty that's why he's willing to sign his life away. So I just wish they did it differently in other jurisdictions, where they'll go into tell me why you're guilty of this, what did you do, and they go through the elements more that way. Here you can have an innocent person that gets up there and just says yes, yes, yes to all the questions about whether they're guilty or not, and then you don't really have that independent basis to know for sure that he's not being forced to do this. And somebody could even be coached to do that. But, you know, if you have a dialogue with a judge going into those kind of details, then even on appeal, it helps on appeal. Because if this guy comes back on appeal and says, hey, I was forced to do this, this is not really what I was wanting to do. Somebody threatened me from the outside. They had contacts in the jail I was in, and they threatened to kill me if I didn't cut a deal. So whatever kind of crazy story, and let's just say it's a legitimate story and why they did it. You just eliminate a lot of that on appellate motions that would be raised to try to reopen this thing if you get into more details like that. So I'm just surprised. And, you know, for most cases, it doesn't matter. I've pled plenty of felonies out in Texas federal courts, state courts. And because state courts, they're very much really quick, and they're not even this drawn out. I mean, you just fill out some forms, they're going in front of the judge, and a minute or two later, they're convicted and sentenced to a decade or more. So this thing here is more formal, but yet it's not formal enough to go into those kind of details with the defendant. Yes, he did waive the appeal as well, and the sentence for first-degree murder in Idaho is life without parole, unless or it could be with parole. For example, 10 plus life is what they say. But in this particular case, my understanding is that they negotiated that it would be without parole of any kind, and then he's doing consecutive of life sentences. So he should never get out at all. Hey, trial channel.
Therefore, with respect to count 1 burglary felony, how do you plead, Mr. Kohberger, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count 2, murder in the first degree, as it relates to the murder of Madison Mogen, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count 3, as it relates to murder in the first degree for the murder of Kaylee Goncalves, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count 4, the first degree murder of Xana Kernodle, a human being, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count 5, the first degree murder of Ethan Chapin, a human being, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Right. The court will find that the defendant understands the nature of the charges and each offense and the possible consequences to him of his guilty plea. Court finds that there is a factual basis for the plea, and that finds the defendant believes.
Yeah, to me, a factual basis is describe why you're guilty of this, Mr. Kohberger. What acts did you take? You don't have to go into a whole lot of detail, but just explain what you did. You know, where did you get the knife? Some of those kind of things. What was your intent when you went in there? Because they're talking about premeditation. What did he say to make it premeditated, for example?
The plea to be in his best interest. I find that the plea was given freely, voluntarily, and was intelligently made. I accept the plea. I direct that it be entered. I'll continue the matter for sentencing in this case. I think it was mentioned on the call Monday afternoon, the defense wishes to waive a pretrial investigation. Is that accurate?
Yes, Your Honor.
The state also?
Yes, Your Honor, the state does not believe pre-sentence investigation is needed, given the evidence that is available.
Yeah, if he's never going to get out and make parole, then what's the point of having a pre-sentence investigation that describes his background, any priors, and all that? So it's really irrelevant for something like this.
We want to, though, make sure that all of the victims have the opportunity to make statements to the court at sentencing.
Absolutely. And certainly both the state and the defense may present whatever sentencing memorandum and other documents you wish me to consider. The victims will be given an opportunity to provide the statements that they wish to at sentencing. Do we need more than one full day for sentencing?
I do not believe so, Your Honor. Obviously, we have numerous victims, and we have victims who share unique perspectives on this, and we want to make sure that they all have time to express their feelings to the court. But I believe that if we can start perhaps 8:30 or so in the morning, that we should be able to complete it all in one day.
Defense agree with that in terms of the time frame?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. So as it happens, we have some time reserved in this case in July and August. The week of July 22nd is available. I don't know if that's too soon for the parties or the next week, the week of August 4 is available. Any preference?
Your Honor, we're prepared as soon as the court wants to schedule it.
The state, I believe, would be prepared on the 22nd. We've told the victims' families that we're looking at approximately those dates.
All right. So
You asked Tedrick Walker, why was the crime scene tore down, hiding more evidence, in your opinion? Yeah, that's a concern. I was concerned about that as well. I know other smart people were concerned about it. And I've talked about this with Leslie. She's concerned about it as well. And so, yeah, it's very, very strange that they tore that down like that. So, not saying that's necessary in and of itself, indicating that there's something to hide, but why don't you just leave it until the guy gets convicted? For example, the jury can never do a walkthrough, right, of the crime scene. And so I just don't understand it. They must have thought they had such a strong case that they could have that be tore down. And the defense counsel, I can't remember if they objected, the defense counsel at the time objected to that or not. But
because of the plan to bring in so many jurors to fill out questionnaires, I had ordered that no other trials could take place in this courthouse the week of July 22nd. And so we will use that in terms of the sentencing date because of what I'm sure will be the significant interest of the media and the public and the logistics that will be required to make that happen. Without trials going, it'll be a lot easier to do that. So let's pick that week. Why don't we pick July 23rd with the idea that if for some reason we don't finish, we could continue into the 24th.
yeah, Christy Lou, you're saying according to an article you read at the time, there was not evidentiary value left in the house. They essentially got it during the investigation. But still, the bones of the house was still there. The floors were still there. The walls would have still been there for the most part. So why they would not allow that as an option for the jury to see. So there is still some evidentiary value. And so even though it was already processed in terms of the forensic value, I think just the ability of a jury, for example, to walk through that and get the perception of how the whole thing was laid out and what path he would have made. The prosecution could have showed the path he made from room to room, all that kind of stuff. It really, it does have a lot of value, I think, to a jury. So, but it's not necessary at this point, obviously.
We'll start at 9 in the morning. Does that give your team enough time, Sandra? 9 in the morning? All right. Any concerns with that date?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
No, sir.
All right. Any reason why I should not rescind the non-dissemination order at this time?
You're right. I think that given the history of this case, it would be best if that remained in place through sentencing. So we have time to make sure there's the ability to completely answer questions That would be the state's preference and recommendation.
Would have no objection for the order to remain in place through
All right,
sentencing.
I will, at this point, the idea to keep it until sentencing, which time it would be withdrawn in order to give the parties the space and time to prepare to.
Yes, that is up in the upper left there, behind the spectator bar there. There's a guy in a blue shirt, and then there's a blonde lady to his right, and then there's another guy at the very end of the bench there. Is that his parents' the last two there? Somebody was saying that. I'm not sure.
Meet what I'm sure will be the deluge of media requests. That's at least my preliminary decision at this point. We can always revisit if it seems to be, for some reason, I should. That said, obviously, I don't think the defendant, a bond was ever set for the defendant. Were it would be revoked. The prior order allowing him to come in civilian clothes is revoked, given his plea and no longer the presumption of innocence. And in fact, now the actual conviction for the crimes.
Yeah, because if this was a contested case, maybe the jurors would want to see how could he go from room to room? How could it be that done without other people waking up? Things of that nature that could have helped resolve those questions for jurors if you had it. But since it's a guilty plea, it's not going to be an issue at all.
He will continue to be held at the jail pending sentencing. Is there anything else, Jay?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
I assume the trial date will be vacated.
trial
and those
is-
4 jurors will be released.
The trial will be vacated, and I'm sure that the jury commissioner will get word to those that receive their summons that they won't be required to attend. So,
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yeah. So now that he's been found guilty, so he's not an accused killer right now. He's a convicted killer of four people.
that said, again, if you would all please wait for the parties and the victims' families and others to leave the courtroom before you do, I would appreciate it. And with that, we're adjourned.
Okay, so that's there. Happened pretty fast and very efficient by this judge. She was no nonsense, got straight to business. And he was doing it by the book. That's the way they do it up there. They don't go into more details with the defendant. So you have to get into more details. I know in federal courts and military courts martials, we call them, in different states have different requirements, but a lot of states it's just more of they have so many cases that they just push them on through. And if you're willing to sign the paperwork saying you're guilty, you go up in front of the judge, say you're guilty, you're plead no contest, you've already agreed to the sentence. So the judge just signs off on it. It's a really quick procedure. But let's go ahead and go to comments of the victim's family. I have 2 of them here. First one we have is Mr. Goncalves.
Bring in Steve Goncalves. He is the father of Kaylee Goncalves. His attorney is Shannon Gray, who has stood by him steadfast from the beginning. Steve, I don't know what to say. You're the first person I thought of when I heard this news today. I reached out to you right away, first to tell you how sorry I was, because I know how this is landing.
So that's the father on the left, and that's his attorney on the right, I believe.
At least I think I do. But I wanted you to have your say. I wanted you to be able to say out loud for everyone to hear what this means to you and your family.
This is anything but justice. This is the opposite of our will. There was no majority believing that this was acceptable. I want to honor all the police officers, the FBI, and all the people that work their tail off. The failure is at the court level, 100%. But the men and the boots on the ground and the women that were out there working, I want to honor everything that they did for our children, 100%. The fault is in leadership and the people that you place this evidence upon. They were weak. They decided to play God and decide what this man's decision should be, and not a jury, not a peers, not his peers. They, so that's where we are today.
Walk me through what happened. Brian Enton, did some really great reporting at the top of this show here, but tell me from your perspective how the last 3 days have played out.
I would say ever since Hitler has demanded an independent investigation, they couldn't get away from this case fast enough. They've done everything to make this case go away. So I don't know what that entails, but he said he was going to have an independent investigator, and all of a sudden we seemed like we were on rails to get rid of this case and make a plea deal. I mean, he's guilty. We all know he's guilty. There's more than enough evidence, but it's tough. It's tough to put a community through this, and it could be bad for reputations and business identities, and there's fallout. But this isn't the will of the victims. This is just one person making a decision, and it doesn't reflect what we were asking for.
Steve, did any
Yeah, he's speaking for the victims of his family. Obviously, he can't speak for all the 4 families involved here, but yeah, I mean, you're a father and your child gets slaughtered like this. Yeah, you want the most egregious, aggressive prosecution possible, and you want the guy to die in pain at the hands of the state. But so I totally get it, but I'm telling you, having done criminal law for so many years, I'm telling you, hopefully he'll see down the road that this is actually a good thing, to know that you're not having to go through grieving of trial or retrial or knew this or that coming out. Or what if it goes to trial and the jury doesn't come back with a conviction? What if there's a hung jury? I don't think you'd have to worry about a acquittal on something like this, but hung jury could be in the works, despite strong evidence to the contrary that does support the prosecution's theory that the evidence is there beyond a reasonable doubt. And what if they don't come back with the death penalty? And then that can be, he's going to be able to fight this, and all the time and effort and the worry that the family's going to be put through. So I totally get it. I just I just think he wants the worst for the defendant, and he wishes he would die, right after this happened. But unfortunately, he's still alive. There's still a legal process to go through. So I think that the chance of there being a juror that says, you know what, I'm not going to vote for the death penalty, I have reservations about that. A lot of people have reservations about the death penalty. They'd have to be open to the death penalty to be seated as a juror, but then when it comes right down to it, making that decision to take someone's life, some people back out of it when they otherwise thought they could do it. And so, all this work that you'd be involved with, and then he doesn't have to admit guilt if there's a contested trial, and then he forever can say, hey, I was falsely accused. So having him admit to this, even though he didn't go into details, is a big thing to help these families get on with their lives and to try to bring some healing and focus on all the good memories that they enjoyed with their loved ones that were savagely, brutally executed and butchered by this absolute monster here, like you guys are saying.
anybody ever call you from the prosecutor's office to just personally discuss this with you? Did anybody offer to meet with you in person to go over this potential plan?
We have meetings all the time on, particularly a lot of times on Friday. No. We had this regular meeting that we have to try basically do an update of what's going on, where things are at, because Idaho is actually an amazing state where it really does care about people. We just get one or two, people who just don't care about the victims and don't care about justice. And it's easy to take the weight out. It's easy to make an excuse and say, I'm doing this for the victims, even though I've never interviewed the victims. I've never.
Well, but the thing is, normally you'd want to talk to the victims, but the victims, if they're against anything but the death penalty, then bring it up to them, then they can get on the news channels and start going there saying, hey, we're getting this word that he wants to plead guilty. And they could have tried to done a lot of stuff to maybe even have it where Kohberger hears about it and he backs out of it or something like that. So I think they need to do it fast. They didn't want to bring this to the attention of parents that they knew were going to publicly resist them. So it's a fine line you got to walk as a prosecutor. And so, yeah, it's Nap kind of, so you're saying there's 4 families impossible to meet all their needs or wants. So in the end, you got this guy being put away for life. He's never going to get out. And that's the most important goal you have. And all that is never a guarantee if you go to trial. It's not a guarantee.
Really talk to them to find out what their true feelings are. So here we are. We're stuck, and we can't get out of it. I ask your audience if anybody knows Judge Hippler, reach out to him and ask him to put his foot down and not accept this offer. It doesn't reflect anything in Idaho. This is not justice. We had an outsider come to our community, kill our kids in their sleep while they're getting a college education, doing everything that they should do, and we don't have the courage to hold him accountable. No plea deal. Let's go for this guy. 100%. Let's do it. And that's how.
Yeah, but if you want to go for broke and go for something that you don't have assurances you're going to get a conviction on, and this is going to make this guy even probably more of a sympathetic figure for folks in the world to support and think he's wrongfully accused. You still have people saying he's wrongfully accused. Okay, so, and he's there in court saying he's guilty of all 4 murders. So anyway, there's a lot of things that are unsettled, that there's closure now. He's convicted, and that is a huge win for the prosecution, in my opinion.
That's how this family stands.
Steve, I know that, it's no secret your daughter Kaylee was so close with Maddie Mogen, best of friends. And I know that you got to know the Mogen family as well. Have you spoken with the Mogen family, and do you know what their reaction is to this plea decision?
We actually just had a meeting with the prosecution and just tore into it and made it clear that we were not in support of this, but we also invited other families into that, and I'll let them speak on their own that were part of that meeting, but we are in no way alone on this. Multiple families believe the same as we do, but I want to honor their abilities to speak independently and as their child. So
Yes, Richard Walker, you're saying I do think there's a cover up to a lot in this case. Why call the cops at noon the next day when you saw him at 4 a.m. and then you call your friends and they come first to the cops and 911 responder. So yeah, this is very much some really bizarre questions like that you just got to shake your head and wonder, how in the world did this happen like this, that people weren't more responsive to this. And so what if does this father here understand that you could have somebody like Sir Tedrick Walker on that jury, and they're saying, you know what, there's a lot of indicators he did it, but I still have reasonable doubts. I'm not going to vote to convict. And then you get a hung jury, and then you got to go through this whole thing again. And then in the end, you'd wind up saying, you know what? Gosh, I wish the state would have just accepted his offer to plea for life without parole.
I don't want to cross that line, but all I will say is there was no majority for this decision at all. And if they're not working for us, they're working against us, guys. I mean, we have to wake up to this. I mean,
Would you rather have him go to trial? You don't get the death penalty, and then he's always going to be saying, I didn't do it, I didn't do it. And then you're going to be frustrated because you're thinking, why won't the guy admit it? Why doesn't he just admit it? Why doesn't he just plead guilty? The guy's a monster. And here you got it. You got him to admit it, and he's never going to get out. That is like a massively huge win for the state and for the victims. But I get it. It's never enough. It's never enough, probably, unless you could probably kill him with your own hands. That's probably the most gratifying thing you would want out of something like this. But obviously that's not going to happen. So
we have to hold people accountable. Coeur d'Alene just had a shooting where we attacked our firemen. People need to stand up to these monsters and stop freaking bowing down to them and giving them childcare. I mean, prison is nothing but adult childcare. You get free vision, you get free dental, you get free meals, you get AC, room and board, cable TV, internet access. It's ridiculous what we give our prisoners. Better than what we treat our vets. Our vets coming back from war with missing limbs. This is unacceptable.
Shannon Gray, I'm going to ask you to step in as well.
yeah, talking about prison is cushy and all that kind of stuff. It's not going to be cushy for this guy. He's going to have a target on his back, and he's the most famous. He's going to be the most famous, infamous, I should say, prisoner there in the Idaho system. He may have to be transferred out of there, like we saw with Charlie Adelson, the convicted murderer dentist out of Florida. He had to get transferred to South Dakota because people were wanting to take hits on him. And so here, he's probably not going to be even in your state. So he's going to be shipped out of there maybe sooner than you can even imagine. And so, Ocean Girl, you agree with me? Over time, I think those
Judge Hippler, Steve just mentioned Judge Hippler in this case. I have to ask you as a matter of law, would Judge Hippler have been fully integrated into this deal plan? Meaning, this is not a surprise to Judge Hippler. Is he going to have to weigh this and then rule from the bench as to whether he'll accept it or not? Or is it a fait accompli by the time they get this far down the road that the judge will accept it?
Well, I think a few weeks ago, Judge Hippler, talked about had there been an offer at all on this case. I think he mentioned it in the courtroom, and maybe that sparked something with the defense and the prosecution. I'm not sure. That being said, with a plea like this, it's with the life sentences and it's agreed upon by the state and the defense. There's small modifications sometimes that they can make to the sentencing regarding, restitution, some other things like that. But if the state presents sufficient facts to the judge or a plea of guilty to the counts, normally judges will accept that, and they'll let the defense know if they're not going to accept that ahead of time. So I would suspect that the plea will go through on Wednesday, and then they'll set over sentencing for a few weeks, so the victims can be present to read victims' impact statements, etc.
So, Steve, I covered a case where the defendant was so overwhelmingly guilty according to the evidence, and it was a death penalty case in Arizona, and that jury voted guilty, and they did not vote for death penalty. So that defendant, Jodi Arias, sits in a prison in Arizona as we speak, and she had multiple access to appeals. I wonder if there's any solace at all in knowing that this can't happen to him at this point. There can be no appeal. There can be not one squeak from Brian Kohberger after he accepts that sentence at the end of this month, unlike what happened in Arizona, where there is always a chance the jury does not choose death. Is there any solace in the fact that you will at least have him silenced and there will be no appeals?
Absolutely zero.
Yeah, see right there, the guy's all emotions. He wants the absolute worst. And so you're willing to roll the dice and you're that company's going to get the death penalty. You're willing to go through that whole trial and everything. So I admire him for loving his daughter enough that he wants the absolute worst for the killer. And, but I think in the end, this is the best outcome you could ask for under the circumstances. If he's not willing to plead guilty, then fine. You're absolutely going to go guns a-blazing and try to take him out. But if a defendant's willing to accept responsibility and he's never going to get out, then this is fine. Keep in mind, if this was in a state that doesn't have the death penalty, he'd be getting the maximum possible sentence under the law.
None. Could be no farther than how we believe. I want my community support. I want that jury to make the decision, not Thompson, not some old man who's 70 freaking years old deciding how my daughter's life weighs in a courtroom. That is not justice. That is not justice at all. I'll take my juries, I'll take my peers all day long. I'm sick of one man deciding or one woman deciding what a life's worth. So that's how I stand on that.
Well, that's the way it works in the American justice system. The head prosecutor is the one that gets to call all those shots. And you can have prosecutors that are absolutely scorched earth. They don't care about the rights of the defendant. They're just trying to get a conviction any way they can. Then you have ones that are totally weak on crime. They don't go after the right defendants or actually pursue the right charges, and they settle cases way too lightly. So this guy is rightfully upset, but I think that in this case, this is such a soothing relief for the victim's family. They just don't quite comprehend it as they will down the road. And we'll get to the other family here that was supportive of the decision here once this is up.
I fully understand how you feel. And none of us can understand what you're going through. None of us is walking in your shoes. And I'm just glad to give you this platform to be able to say these things publicly.
Yeah, I mean, eye for eye. I mean, yeah, it'd be nice if the state could just, do exactly what to Kohberger, what he did to each of these victims here. But that's not the way our system works.
And I'm also glad that you got the support of Shannon Gray, who's just been a rock for you. Thank you to the both of you. Steve, please give Christy and your kids our love. We will still be here. We'll be here Wednesday. We'll be here at the end of the month, and we'll be here for you after that as well.
Well, thank you. And you've always been a hard worker, and that's why we've always tried to partner with people who put that extra effort. But we couldn't pick the prosecution. We inherited them. But everywhere we go, we partner with people like you who are relentless and tireless, and they just chase down the truth. And I really appreciate that's what you brought to our case. And when people reach out to me, I'll tell them that this is a network that you can partner with and understand that they'll be there to the very end.
God bless you, Steve. I think we just lost Shannon, but I'm sending you my my deepest love and wishes for some peace in all of this, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's Steve Goncalves. So I can't imagine what he's going through, and it's very hard to accept that this guy is not going to be executed by the state. I totally get that. So let's go to another interview or statement made publicly. And this is a statement made by the Mogen family's attorney. we go.
Good afternoon. I'm Leander James from the law firm of James, Vernon and Weeks in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I'm a victims' rights attorney. For the past 2 years, I've had the privilege and the honor to provide pro bono representation in this criminal case for Karen Laramie and Scott Laramie,
So he's doing this for free.
the loving mother and stepfather of Maddie Mogen. I will be reading a statement of gratitude today from the Laramies. 962 days ago, we lost our Maddie, our kind, loving, vivacious, and caring daughter full of purpose and promise. We are grateful for the gift of her life, and we have grieved the loss of that life during each of these 962 days. We love you, Maddie, and we miss you. We are grateful for the gift of the young, vivacious, promising lives of Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan. And we deeply, deeply mourn their senseless loss. We remain in solidarity with their families and friends, and we continue to shower them with our prayers and support. We are grateful for their prayers, love, and support that they have given us. They have helped us and sustained us during our darkest times. We are grateful to the prosecutor, Bill Thompson, and his dedicated and caring team, including victim coordinators, Kim and Stacy, who have helped to guide us through the sometimes confusing and disorienting legal process. Thank you for all your dedicated, diligent, and tireless commitment to justice and the successful outcome reached today. We support the plea agreement 100%. While we know there are some who do not support it, we ask that they respect our belief that this is the best outcome possible for the victims, their families,
I agree.
and the state of Idaho.
It's the best you could.
We extend our deep gratitude to the many law enforcement officers and staff who worked tirelessly to obtain the critical evidence that brought justice today, including the Moscow Police Department, the FBI, the Idaho State Patrol, and the Lake County Sheriff's Department. We are deeply grateful to Judge Hippler and Judge John Judge before him. We thank you for your diligence, thoughtfulness, and judicial guidance. We appreciate the difficult work you have done to balance the rights of all involved and to uphold the rule of law. You have had our prayers and support throughout this case. We send our love and gratitude to the many family and friends who have supported us, cared for us, and helped us to heal our open emotional wounds. To the good people of North Idaho, who have showered us with kindness and support, we thank you. We also mourn today with you the recent tragic and senseless loss of two brave North Idaho firefighters. We extend our prayers and support to their families.
Yeah, Yvette Stoddard. No, he's not going to get the death penalty. By this plea agreement, he's not going to get the death penalty, but as I understand it, he's not going to get 10 to life. He's actually going to get life without parole, and those sentences are going to be served consecutively. So he should never be released.
Not alone. We understand your pain. For all parents who have endured the loss of a child, we know recovery is a long and at times an almost unbearable journey. But you are not alone. And there is hope and there is healing. We thank those in the press who have respected our privacy and the grieving process and the privacy and grieving process of the families of Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan. To others in the press, we gently encourage you to do the same. We thank the many people across our nation and beyond who have reached out to us, prayed for us, and extended their kindness. You too have helped us on our journey to heal. We now embark on a new path. We turn from tragedy and mourning. We turn from darkness and uncertainty of the legal process to the light of the future. We have closure. We embark on a path of hope and healing. We invite all of those who have mourned with us to join us, and we wish you well. Thank you. I will now share a few words of my own. Over the past 2 years, I've been amazed and humbled by Karen and Scott's strength, endurance, and faith. They have uplifted me and so many. They founded a nonprofit to help others in the name of Maddie. They have been a beacon of hope amidst a dark and tragic time. To those young and bright attorneys out there looking for purpose and meaning in your profession, I invite you to join the effort of crime victim attorneys to bring victims justice with compassion, empathy, humility, and understanding. This case is not the end of violence. This case is not the end of lawlessness. We need your help to bring hope and healing to the innocent caught in the crossfire of life. Thank you all.
Karen and Scott want to share.
Sure. Could you just say your name one more time, sir? Leander James, Leander, last name is James.
Yeah, so there we have it. And so apparently, I did not see it in the media, but apparently there was half the families are pro disagreement and the others are against it. So, and the ones that are pro for this plea agreement, obviously they would have to be living up there for 3 months, at least 3 months. And the state probably isn't going to pay that for them. And obviously they would have been there, want to have been there every day of this. And then have to go through this maybe more times because maybe there'd be a mistrial after a hung jury, or maybe there'd be some kind of issue where there's some legal technicality and the case gets busted on appeal. So, and how often do people get the death penalty right away? It's, if it is with the states, it takes many, many years. You know, the death penalty that's worked the quickest that I've ever seen and recall was the one for the Oklahoma City bomber. And what was his name? Let's see. He sort of looked like Kohberger too, from my memory, anyway. Anybody remember that guy? Here, let me look it up. That was in 1995. Timothy McVeigh. Yeah, Timothy McVeigh. So that happened April 19th in 1995. Trying to see when he was convicted. But the feds pursued that, and he got the death penalty, and it was executed really fast. Not finding here in a quick internet search, but anyway. But yeah, these things are just drag on forever. Okay, Missy's saying it's 1997, so that's really fast. Really fast. JC, you happen to be playing in the Army band there. Wow, that's interesting. Thanks for your service. I remember that from last live stream. You said you're in the service as well. I didn't know there's. Future, you're saying there's a museum there. I wasn't aware there's a museum. Anyway, this is going to be something that's going to be debated. I've seen comments about this is staged. So he was framed, that he's being forced to plead guilty and all that. I just don't think that's that's the case. I think he's pleading guilty because he is in fact guilty. And so if there's still the debate after he admits to being guilty in open court, granted, he didn't have to go into the details of why he's guilty, but this is something that should reinforce to the two family members that are against this plea agreement that you never know in a situation like this involving death whether jurors will feel comfortable deciding on that death penalty. I mean, you couldn't even get 12 jurors to agree to the Parkland shooting where 17 people were murdered. So anyway, just me, you're saying the Manson killer death penalty, I think you mean to say, it was overturned, 50 years of appeals, and is now free. Yeah, this case would be swirling around. I mean, Idaho would be really known for this case not having any closure. This could go on for decades. So that's not a reason to pursue that, obviously, but I think it's something that will help the healing of that part of the country. YouTube, Jenny, you're interested in learning about his autism diagnosis. Don't know how much of this information, the criminal files and whatnot, will be released. They're not like the sunshine laws of Florida. Yeah, that's not what I understand, Mary. Lisa Morrison, it sounds like 2 of the 4 families are against the death penalty in this situation. They're very grateful and thankful. Food is love. Yeah, Donna Adelson, her trial's coming up next month, so we plan on covering that, as I've said. I was going to cover the Kohberger case, but now since that's going away, not going to cover that. So the Morphew case, I think I'll cover as well. And that's not till January, February, and that might be delayed as well. But I'm going to cover, I think Friday night, I'm going to cover Donna Adelson, and there's some unique aspects of Donna's case I think I could relate that to what Kohberger has for his situation. So what do y'all think? Is this case where you think that justice was done? This is the best outcome? Does anybody think that they should roll the dice and go contest it all the way, trying to get the death penalty? Yeah, I think sentencing is 23rd of July. Did I get that right? I wrote down 23rd. Anyways, this month still, so this is really fast. There's also not going to be as much interest in movie rights and book deals and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if that's allowed in Idaho to profit off crimes like this. Alex Perkins, you're asking about how long will Donna's be delayed? I think the defense is going to keep asking for delays up until the trial starts, is my guess. So I just don't think that it's going to be granted. Unless they basically say, we are so far behind, we still need more weeks to do this. The judges Not inclined. He basically told him we're going forward. Yeah, this is a sure thing, Shannon. He admitted guilt, but there's a lot of questions that remain. Ocean Girl, you're saying Idaho doesn't allow convicted felons to profit off their crimes. So this guy's sort of going to fade away. He's not going to be getting all the attention and sympathy by him pleading guilty. Yeah, July 23rd. Okay. Tally Gal, you're saying that makes sense to you. Yeah, the families can speak out, victim impact statements, they can say that on the 23rd. Brady Starr, you're talking about the James Walsh case in Massachusetts, a lot of problems. Massachusetts State Police pulled some crazy things. I've heard comments about that, but I'm not tracking that. Oh, yeah, that's true, JC. This is the 4th. I forgot Friday's the 4th. So maybe I shouldn't do that on the 4th, or should I? I'm not sure yet. I'd forgotten all about the 4th. Yeah, victim impact statements, those should automatically be allowed. I've never seen it where they're not allowed, especially on a murder case. Trial channel, Brian Walsh is due to go to trial in October. And that's the one in Massachusetts there. So are you guys going to be there, trial channel? Do you have a name you want us to refer to you as rather than just a trial channel? Are there several of you that represent the channel when you come on and comment like this? Or I don't know if this is one person. If you want to share a name, I leave that to you. Food is love. You're saying the judge set aside 2 days for victim impact statements. Okay. I missed that part of it. We've been doing that most of the players from the Karen Reed case. Oh, brother. Okay, wait a minute. That's in September. Okay, thanks, Food is Love. Thanks for doing mod work tonight. Appreciate you. Shannon Brown, you're saying Brian Walsh may get off, same crappy investigation, no reports, went through his phone illegally, etc. Boy, they're just terrible up there in Massachusetts. Ocean Girl, you said families rarely get full answers. Chris Watts pleaded guilty of what the death penalty, but didn't give details. I wouldn't believe any answers as to why from Brian. Yeah, I mean the guy's obviously got serious mental problems. So don't expect something rational from people like that. All right, so trial channel will be covering it. You're just one person. Okay. Thanks for responding. Yeah, Senator Birchmore case, though, that's in federal court, so that won't have any live streaming coverage. And JC, you're saying the judge in the Brian Walsh case seems very sharp and good. I hope so. I don't think I could take another judge like we had in the Karen Reed case. And Proctor is a lead investigator in the Walsh case. Oh, brother, that's unreal. Patricia White, you're saying it's the same Norfolk County DA, same state police, Proctor, Buchanan, Tully, Garino, etc. They messed up with the consent to search for the search warrant. All that evidence might be out. That's interesting. Can you imagine if they lose the case because they didn't do proper police procedures? And that's what happens. Sloppy police work. I can tell you, I've won a lot of cases as a defense attorney based on botched investigations. It is very common. Did they find the body? Walsh's wife? I didn't recall that was a missing body case. Yeah, they are an absolute hot mess disaster. I agree. The trial channel. Okay, no body. Okay, interesting. Okay, if that's kicking off in October, that would allow us to cover that. So that's good to know. Stavridis, Procter and Crew stopped cell phone search after they realized they didn't have a warrant. Unbelievable. Yeah, Morphe case, that's supposed to be like in beginning of next year, January, February timeframe, but it probably will be continued, is my guess. There's another case. Tully wrote reports 2 years later. I mean, they're just going to, if they botch that investigation, they've already done the one for Karen Reed. I mean, those guys have the worst reputation of any law enforcement in the country. Clint Adams. Did it ever come outside that BK was the one on social media under a false name talking about the murders? I remember hearing about that, but that was a couple years ago. I haven't heard anything since. All right, so if there's any other cases you guys think I should follow, let me know. I prefer to follow ones that have live stream coverage capabilities. Unlike the Birchmore case, that's a very interesting case, but it's in federal court. Federal courts don't allow any live streaming at all. Justice of dissent. Yeah, they've been getting away with it for a few years. Yeah, it's like an organized gang in some respects. Criminals with guns and badges. Lauren, you're saying you Googled how to dispose of a body if you really need to. Yeah, defense is gonna say all this was done by Proctor, I imagine. Carol, tell what does it actually mean, a cash bond? It means you have to put up the cash, 100% cash. You cannot go to a bail bondsman and assign assets and give us 10% cash down and they'll cover the 90% through an insurance policy. So that's what they mean by cash bond. If it's cash bond, you're not gonna have anything less than absolute 100% of the money on hand. Yeah, Corey Richards. Okay, that's one that I think I'll be covering as well, depending on the time frame. Corey Richards. Laura Owens, I've not heard of that. That's in Arizona. So is that a female defendant? Okay, the Suzanne and Mark Simpson case. And that's in San Antonio. I think my sister has mentioned that. I think I looked up a while ago. Oh, yeah, the Rex Huerman case. That one. That's a really sicko there. Oh, yeah, Shannon Gardner. That's a Florida case. I meant to cover that one, and that one, I've not covered that in a while. Yeah, that Luigi guy, the Manhattan killer, he's in federal court as well, so that one won't be as interesting to cover. Brady Starr, yeah, the FBI will have years of work investigating Massachusetts State Police. Shannon Brown, you're saying cover the Brian Walsh evidentiary hearings. Well, those are already ongoing right now, so I'm not sure if I want to jump into it midstream if I've already been covering some days. So the Suzanne and Mark Simpson. We live here in San Antonio. Oh, because it's Suzanne and Brad Simpson. Okay. You know, there was this somebody in a gated community about, I don't know, probably about 5 minutes drive away from where Leslie and I live. And that just popped up, and that's something that's in a gated community. So I was going to go check out the area where that happened, drive down the street, but it's a gated community, so I couldn't go in there. But that was some guy that founded some real popular Tex-Mex restaurant here in San Antonio. They got quite a few restaurants, and he was knifed by some 29-year-old relative. He was like 78, and some 29 or 28-year-old relative of his. He was offered to spend the night there as he was traveling through Texas, traveling from like Arizona, and got in some kind of argument. And the allegation is that he killed his relative, the 79-year-old. Judy Sullivan, sounds like more and more wackos are in the news lately. Yeah, it does seem like that, doesn't it? I guess. JC, you're saying there's a known study that you found that dirty cops have the same psychological profile as criminals. They're just on the other side of the law. Yeah, Not seen that study, but I believe that. Yeah. Hoslong, bleached bones and body found in the Morphew case. I've heard about that. How did they find her body? I have not followed enough about the case. So when I get up to speed, does anyone have any good intel on that right now? Amy Bonner, you're saying Laura Owens is a fake pregnancy scammer and done it to multiple men. There's a lot to it, and they're trying to make an example of her. So it's not a murder case, apparently. Yeah, John Smith. I've not been covering the Brooks Houck trial. That's ongoing right now. I wanted to cover it, but they also don't have live stream capabilities, not televised. Whatever you're saying, could the judge ask him questions? For example, where's the knife? They don't do that as part of the plea agreement unless the prosecution insists that's something that needs to be brought up. But apparently in Idaho, they don't ever ask for details to make the defendant explain why they're guilty in their own words. Make the defendant explain how they meet the elements. English girl, you're saying Walsh in the Stearns case. Stern, I'm not familiar with. I'll write that down. Ocean Girl, you're saying Suzanne Morphy's bones were found, but they've been moved from where the body was decomposed. Interesting. Is that how they found the body, though? Did he, when he went to go move the body from one location to another, did they have some kind of tracking on him with his cell phone or something? Because I know it was 50 miles south of his house. Okay, Sir Cedric Walker, you're saying they accidentally found it by searching for a missing lady. Wow. Hypochondriac, yeah, these cases make you feel sick, don't they? That's why initially I thought I would not want to be covering the Kohberger case. It was just so gruesome. And now we don't have to cover it anymore. I'll cover the sentencing, and if there's anything interesting between now and then, I'll cover that. But Mary Lisa Morrison, they found her body while looking in Moffett, Colorado, while looking for another woman. It's called the Boneyard. Divine intervention, if you ask me. Barry is done. He actually smiled in court. Yeah, he had a really big smile in court, I guess, looking at his daughters. That's let's see. Pimpernel, they were looking for another body and discovered hers as well. Well, why would they be looking in that area, though? And why would he happen to just coincidentally pick an area where other bodies are buried, or at least one other body? YouTube Jenny, you feel like BK should have to tell what happened. Yeah, but if they don't do that in Idaho, they're not going to make an exception there, is from my experience. You have to be in a jurisdiction or that's required of all defendants, and they're just don't require it in Idaho. So that's that. And I mean, I think those kind of details explaining that, does that really help healing for the family? Or is that just solving our curiosity? I think we pretty much know how it happened, and enough of the details that having him describe it, I don't know if that's helps anything with closure other than for knowledge's sake. Yeah, you're saying Idaho University had a huge impact on tearing down the building. I heard that was the case as well. They're probably hurting on students enroll, and the enrollment probably went way down for that college, that university. All right, well, that's I think that's going to be it for tonight. And oh wow, just me, your daughter went to that Parkland. That's eerie. Mickey Steins, I've not heard of that one. Okay, well, hey, thanks for your support of justice causes here, and I'll have to rethink about Friday night on the 4th of July, and otherwise Saturday, Sunday. So a lot of times I just jump on. I'm sorry, I'm not the kind of person that puts a lot of advance notice out, but generally, most common time you'll find me on is Friday nights and Sunday nights. Sunday night's the most common time I will show up. So with that, you all have a safe one, and talk to y'all later. Have a good night.